Aloha everyone, welcome to my channel. Kapehe here. You can call me Cap for short, of course. All right, so in today's video, we are going to be building out a React application. We're going to be starting from scratch. We are also going to be using React routing, and we'll talk about that more, but we're going to be pulling data from a NASA API. So the API that we're going to be using is the NASA APOD. APOD stands for Astronomy Picture of the Day. So it does exactly what the name entails, which is it's going to be pulling the picture of the day, and we'll be pulling out data from that, the image itself, the title of the image, the paragraph that NASA provides that talks about the image. So yeah, let's get started. All right, so we are going to be building our app from scratch. There are a couple things we need to grab from NASA to make sure that we are calling to the right API. We'll get into that in a little bit, but for now, let's just cover real quickly what we're about to pull from the NASA API and what we're going to be rendering on our screen. So we're going to have the photo, we're going to have the photo's title, we're going to have the current date, and we will have the information on the photo. It's usually just a small paragraph describing what we're looking at. So we are going to be using the React router. So the React router is React's way of navigating around our application. So we will be building a SPA, a single page application. So what the React router does for us is it takes that SPA, that single page application, and breaks it up into chunks. We are going to have our URL navigate us to the component that we want it to put on the screen for us. We'll get more into that in a little bit once we start building out our application. But for now, just know that we're going to be building in React and we're going to be building with the React router. So we're going to be pulling our data that we need from NASA. So let's just NASA API. Now, if we go to api.nasa.gov, that is where we're going to find all the stuff that we need for the API call. So if we look through this, we're going to generate a key. There's authentication, there's rate limits. We can ignore all that for now. But if we want to browse APIs, there's many that we can choose from, but we're going to be working on this one, the Astronomy Picture of the Day, the APOD. So if we open that up, this is where we're going to find information on it. Here's an example image. Here's what the request will look like. But for now, we're just going to need this link right here. So we'll hold on to that. Now, what we need to do is we need to generate an API key. This is unique for each of us. So for this demo, we will have our generation happen, but you need to do this on your own and put in your first name, your last name, and your email. So I'm going to do mine. And I'm going to sign up. Now we have generated an API key. So I'm not going to be using this in other things from now on. So I don't want to hide it from all of you necessarily because we're using it in this example. But that's what your key will look like. You can also go to your email address and they will have generated a API key for you and emailed it to you. But for now, we're going to do that. We are going to see how we are going to hide that API key by using environment variables, but that will also be once we start building. So for now, let's hold on to this. Let's not exit out of this browser window because we want to come back to this. So let's go into our terminal. In here, we're going to run a couple commands and get our React application started up. So first, to create our React app, I am in the folder that I would like my React application to live. So I want to run the command npx and then create React app, and I'm going to call it NASA APOD. So the first part of that is going to install and run the command. If you don't have it installed, this is a great command to use, the npx. If you already have create React app installed, you don't necessarily need to have that npx. Create React app is going to be creating the React app. And then the NASA APOD, that's our naming of the application. So you can make that whatever you want. You can do NASA-photo, NASA-react, whatever you want. But I'm going to use NASA-APOD, press enter, and it's going to build our React app for us. This might take a while, but just let it do its thing. I do love the Create React app because it takes out a lot of the nitty-gritty work that happens. And it just builds an application for you. So that's what's happening right now. So we're going to, once this is done, we're going to open this up in VS Code. That is the text editor that I like to use. You can use whatever you'd like, but we're going to be working in VS Code. So it has a few commands that we can use to get into the project. We can CD into it. I do have a video on terminal, like the 10 terminal must know commands. And I do talk about CD in there. So if you want to learn more about that, check that video out. So we are going to CD into NASA APOD. Click into that. Now I'm in NASA APOD, and I'm going to open that up by using the shortcut command space period or code space period, and that's going to open up our VS Code for us. So now that my VS Code is open, I'm going to open up my source folder, and we're just going to kind of look around. This is what Create React App created for us. So in here, just the default app that it builds for us. I'm going to open up the terminal within my VS Code. To open that up, you're just going to do Control tilde, and that will open up what I just did right there. So in here, to get our app running, we are going to run the command npm start. You can use yarn, you can use npm. I'm going to be using npm today. Running npm start is how we're going to get our React application to show up in the browser. So let's see if everything's set up and good to go. So I run npm start, and it takes me directly to the browser, localhost 3000. And sure enough, we see that our app.js is rendering. If we go back to our code, we'll see the learn React. We'll see that there's a logo. We'll see all these words, the edit app.js, save to reload. And that's exactly what's happening here. So we indeed have the React app all ready to go. So that is awesome. So let's go back to our VS Code. And in here, we're going to build out our components. I'm going to put all my components into one folder, and then from there, build out each one. So in source, new folder, I'm going to do components. In here, I'm going to create 3 different components. I'm going to do home.js. I'm going to do nasaphoto.js, and I'm going to do navbar.js. All right, so now that our component structure is set up, we can start coding. Okay, so as I said earlier, we're going to be using the React router. The React router is a dependency that we actually need to install. So the dependency is React router DOM. So if we come down here, I'm going to open up a new terminal window within my VS Code. And again, I'm using npm. So we're going to do npm install --save, and we're going to do React router DOM. So this is just installing the dependency. We're going to see this in our package.json, but let's run that. Let's install that. And we should be able to see in our package.json, once this is done, we should see that dependency added. And then we'll be able to use it, and we won't get any errors once we do start using it. And yeah, so after this, we're going to update our app.js. But let's come back here and let's just kind of hang out for a second. We'll see our imports. We're going to edit a bunch of this because we don't want to use the logo. We don't want to use the text that they have here, the default, because we want to change it a little bit. So yeah, that's going to take a little bit. If we come to our package.json, it looks like it's so close. And yeah, almost there. Let's actually clean this up a little bit. So I'm going to get rid of this whole line because we don't want that. And we're going to install or import a bunch of things. So if we come to package.json, we'll see that React router DOM was installed and it's ready to use. So let's go back to our app.js and let's edit some stuff. I'm going to pull this down. So yeah, I'm going to exit out of this and we're going to update the app.js. So we have our import React from React. Let's add the browser router and the route. So we're going to import. Oh, browser router. And you could do an alias, you could do browser router as router, but because this is a small enough app, we're just going to use browser router. So that and route. And we're going to install that or import that from React router DOM. So now that we have that, I keep hitting other things. So now that we have that installed, it's going to be a little dull because we're not using it yet. We're going to also import other components that we're using. So we built out the home one. We are going to be using that. And thanks to VS Code, it kind of like predicts what we are trying to type. So that makes it easy. We're going to import the NASA photo component from components from NASA photo. That's awesome. Close that off. And then that's it. Those are imports for the app.js file. Down here, let's delete everything in the return because we want to start clean. All right, so in here, we're going to use, let me pull this up a little bit. We're going to use the browser router. And in here, we're going to create a div that houses all of our routes. So we're going to do route, and we're going to call this route to be the home route. So what this route does is we are assigning the home component to a path. And that path is going to be the default backslash. And I will explain exact in a second, but we're going to do that same thing for component, the NASA photo. And that path we are going to call, we're going to name that path NASA photo. And let's close that up. So what we have here is we have our browser router. Again, that is telling our browser that we are going to be using routes. And then in the route, that's where we are telling the URL, whatever the URL is, that's what component we want to show. So this is where we assign it. So here, if you look at our first one, home is going to always be the path with the /. NASA photo, if we want that component to show up, we will go to the path that's, for now, localhost 3000 / NASA photo. The reason why we put the exact is because we want, notice how there's a / here and here. We want to make sure that the exact / that's by itself, that if it's just the /, it is always going to be home. Home's not going to be affected by this /. It won't get confused. So we want to tell React, hey, we want this / to be home and no other / because we don't want it to get confused by all the other /. So yeah, so this is all set up for us. We have our app.js built out and we have our routes assigned, which component to which path. We're going to save that. And nothing really should happen right now, but let's see what's going on here. Yeah, so we're going to have errors because there's a lot of things that I've imported that is not being used. Like home and NASA photo don't have an export. So there's not going to be, it's going to kind of be mad at us right now because there's no export. It's not been built out. So let's go build those out. So our home component, if we want to build this one out, we always have to import React from React. And we're also going to import link. So link is also part of the React router DOM. So link, because we've already assigned home to something, we can use link here because route is for assigning it and link is for using it. We've already assigned it. Now let's use it. So we're going to do export default function home. And let's open that up and let's do the return as we'll create a div. And in here, we're going to use link just like we use route, but we don't need to assign it. So we're going to link to NASA photo and then close that off. We want that to say see into the stars. So what's happening here? So what we are doing in this is the home page is going to have a giant button. And we haven't styled anything out yet, but it's going to be a giant button. And what it's going to do is once you click on it, it takes you to the NASA photo component. And because we've already assigned it in the app.js, we don't have to do anything here except link to it. So that's all we need to do for the home route. We're going to save that. And again, we're not going to see much going on because nothing is happening. But if we go to localhost, we'll see into the stars. We click on that. And sure enough, it takes us to the NASA photo. Because we haven't built out NASA photo, nothing's going to show up. And if we were to go back to the home page, we would see into the stars. So that / is taking us back to this component, the home component. Now let's build out our NASA photo component. This is where all the cool stuff is going to happen. So I am going to import React from React. And we are going to export default. We'll call this, if I can type NASA, if I can type NASA photo and open that up. Okay, cool. So in here, we're going to have our return and nothing's going to go in here yet. Let's fetch that API, okay? So we're going to be using React hooks. If you want to learn more about React hooks, there's plenty of articles on it in scotch.io, all over the place. We're not going to talk about it too much here, but we are going to be setting our state and using that. Other than that, go learn more about React hooks. It's actually pretty awesome. So here we're going to do const. We're going to do photo data, and then we're going to do set photo data. This is our state, and we're going to do use state. And right now we're going to set that state to null. It's going to have nothing. So in here, we're going to create a function that fetches the photo for us. So we're going to be doing the use effect, which is also another thing that we're not going to talk about much in this video, but use effect is kind of like a like component did mount type thing, if you're familiar with that. So we are going to do use effect, and that we're going to create an arrow function. And in here, we are going to create a function that fetches that photo. So we're going to do async function, and we're going to call it fetch photo. And then we're going to await for that fetch. Now that fetch is going to have that URL that we created earlier. Let's open up those backticks. Let's go back here and let's copy this. Okay, so put it right in there, and that's pretty long. And we're going to get rid of our API key soon, but not yet because we're not at that point yet. But we will hide that just so we don't push it, so we can keep it safe. But for now, we'll just keep that there. And then in here, const data await, and then res.json. So that's going to pull out all of our data from that. And then we're going to set the photo data to whatever data we pull out. So now we're setting our state. Now, in order to use that, we need to come back up here and call fetch photo. So that will grab that function that we just built out that's fetching that API and run it. Now, if we get nothing back, oh, and we also want it to only run once. So we're going to stop it with that empty array. All right, so if we don't get any information back, let's say the API is broken, we want it to return something, not like a giant error. So we can do if no photo data, return, and we'll do an empty div, just so it's not broken. At least something's returned. And yeah, because as I've been working with this, sometimes the API is a little slower or it just doesn't return. And I want it to just not be a giant error. So that's why I've added that in. So in here, let's use that data that we've pulled from the API. So we're going to create a div. And in that, we're going to do image source is equal to, and in here, we're going to do photo data.url. So let me show you real quick where this is coming from. Let's save that. This is all going to break. Let me close this image tag. Yeah, because there's no alt. Let me just finish this up. So alt would be the photo data.title. And then, yeah, so we'll just leave it at that. So right now we are pulling in the photo data, which up here, we set the photo data to the data that we pulled out because we set const data to the response, the JSON version of it. So let's see what happens here. So if we save that, come back here, let's go back to our React app. Oh, of course, I did not import. So down here, we'll do use state and use effect from React. We could have put it up here, but we'll just split it out for today's purpose. So let's save that. Let's go here. So seeing to the stars, let's click on that and see what our NASA photo looks like. So it's pulling in the data. It's pulling in that photo URL. That's beautiful. So in here, let's actually console log our data. We'll do data. Okay. So here in our console, right here, we have that data. So if I were to use any of this stuff, it would show up on my screen. So when I did photo data.url, that is me diving into this API. So we have right here the URL. So photo data.url is going to pull back this image. And if I opened just this link, it would show this picture. Let's actually do that. So that we'll copy, paste that there, and that's our picture. So all I'm doing really is just diving into this API, diving into the data and picking out what I want to be rendered on my screen. So I could do the date, the explanation, which is all this cool stuff about what the picture is. I could do media type, the title. So we are going to be using a bunch of these, but I just wanted to show you how this API, how the JSON looks for this API and which ones we're going to be using. So yeah, we're doing photo data.url in this first one. Now let's use some more. Let's create another div. And in here, we're going to be creating an H1, and we don't want to hard code the photo title. Why? Because it changes every day. So we're going to do photo data.title. So whatever happens to be the title of the day, that's what will go right there. We're also going to use the photo data.date. And let's also use, we'll do photo data dot, we'll do the explanation. Cool. So now that's saved. Let's look at what's going on over here. Get rid of that. Yeah. Okay. So we have the photo, we have the title, we have the date. So today's the 12th. And here's a whole bunch of information. Where are these meteors coming from? Yada, yada. That's cool. I really like this picture. It's actually really pretty. Now, let me show you one gotcha in this. So if we go back to our console, we open up our data. In here, if you see media underscore type, it's image. And I know it says picture of the day, but sometimes it's a video of the day. And that media type is not image, and it's video or something like that. So we want to look for, if it's image, do image. If not, let's do an iframe, because if it's not an image, it's not going to show up in our image tag. So let's come back to our return. Now in here, we're going to be in this div around this image. I'm going to do photo data dot, and then it was media underscore type. If it's equal to image, then run, we're gonna get rid of that, then run this image tag. Cool. And if not, and we'll talk about what I'm doing here, but if not, we want to return an iframe. And rather than typing in all this stuff, I'm just going to copy and paste what I have in here. This is going to have some styling as well, but we will ignore that for right now. All right, so let's walk through this. So what I've added is a ternary. A ternary is like an if-else statement that whatever properties at the beginning, if it's that, run that. If not, then run the second part of the ternary. And this colon right here, this is what is kind of like the else. So it's like, if this, then run this, else run this, if that makes sense. So, okay. So if the photo data dot media type is image, then return this. Else return this. Make sense? All right. Now today we have an image that's being returned from NASA. So this won't be an issue, but if you were to use this, you're going to really want to use this if else, because that media type does change. And if you're using an image tag for HTML, then you're going to want to do like this if else, otherwise it'll break. And I had that issue when I was building this out. So yeah. Okay, so now that that's all built out, let's actually look at what's happening. It should not, yep, it's all good. We still see our NASA photo and all the information. All right, okay, so let's continue on. So we're going to be hiding this key. So we don't want to push this to GitHub because it's a unique key that we generated. So let's go ahead and create a file. So in the root of the folder, new file, we'll do a .env. So what this .env is going to do is it's going to have environment variables that we will put we're going to be putting our key in this, and then we're going to be hiding that from GitHub, and we'll walk through that process. Okay, so the way React does environment variables is it always starts with React underscore app underscore, and then you can name it whatever you want. So we're going to, and it must be capitalized, all of it capitalized, React app. So that's the default. That tells React, hey, we're about to create a environment variable. And then I'm going to call my NASA underscore key and then pull in my key. So it is in my NASA photo. I'm going to grab this key. I'm going to copy it out of there. I'm going to put it right in there. All right, so we're going to save that. Now, make sure you go into your git ignore. So this is where we put in things that we want ignored. I'm just going to stick it right above here. Now watch, see the .env? See how it looks? Watch when I put it in here and I hit save and it kind of disappears a little bit. So that is VS Code's way of telling us, hey, when you push this to GitHub, that env file will not be pushed to GitHub because you ignored it. So yeah, that's what happened there. Now, to make sure that our API key is being used, let's pull in, we got to go back to our NASA photo API. So right below the imports, we're going to do const, we'll do API key is equal to process.env.react underscore app underscore NASA key. So that's what we've named it, the React app NASA API key. So now let's use, so we've given it a name, API key. That way we don't have to write this out every single time. And because we did the React app, because we're doing process.env, we don't need to import anything for this file in order to use that environment variable. So that's really great. So in here, we're going to come down to where we took that key out, and if I can type, and in here, we're going to use API key. So if we save that, all right, now to make sure that that's all good to go and that our API key is being ignored and everything's good, let's restart our server. And I'm going to Control-C to enter out, npm start again. Now, if you change anything outside of the source folder, you're going to need to restart that server. So I've done that, and sure enough, we have our photos still showing up, and that is hiding our API key within the .env, and now it's all secure. So once you do push this to GitHub, that won't be pushed, and your keys can be kept private. So that's really great. All right, so now let's go to our last component, the Navbar component, and let's build this one out. Okay, so this one is only going to be viewable in the NASA photo component. So let's build this out, and then we will show how to put this component into another one. So let's import React from React, and we're going to import link from React router DOM. Okay, so now that we have our imports, let's build out our Navbar component. Okay, so we're going to just right away, we're going to return, we'll do a div, and in here, we're going to do an unordered list. And in here, we're going to do, if I can type, link, and then we're going to link to the /. Now remember, we assigned / to home. So this is linking to homepage, and we're going to say, take me home. So it's going to take us home. Okay. So let's see how this looks on our page. Let's get rid of this and scroll up to the top. Oh, of course. So what we need to do in order to use this, so right now, all it is just a link that says take me home, but we're not using this anywhere. So let's go back to our NASA photo. And in here, we're going to, before we do anything else, import Navbar from Navbar, that one. Okay. So now that that is imported, let's use it. And to use a component, all we have to do is do navbar and close it out. So this is telling React, hey, we're going to be using that component that we just imported and use it within our NASA photo component. Now, what React likes to have is a parent div. So right now we're getting some errors because navbar is outside of this parent div that we've created. So what React has is React fragments. So before we would do React, I always do that, React.fragment, but they've created a shortcut, and we can just do that open, and we will do right underneath this div. So that gets rid of all the errors that we just had. And if we save that, we're not going to get too much into React fragments, but really what it does is it's creating that parent div without naming it div or anything else. So it's React fragments, and this is the short syntax version of it. So if we've saved that, let's go back here and we see take me home. So if we click on take me home, it's going to take us home. See into the stars takes us to NASA photo. It's all working. Okay, so let's style it because it's kind of not the prettiest. I mean, this is the prettiest, but it's so giant. Let's do some styling. Now, I don't want to get too much into styling, so I'm just going to briefly overview what my styles are, but I'm just going to throw it in if we want, you can dive more into CSS in the article itself or in any other Scotch article that talks about CSS. But right now, all we're going to do is we're going to go to app.css. Let's get rid of all that. Paste in that. Let's save it. Now we've got to go all over and add in our class names. But right here, what we're pretty much doing is we are importing our URL. We're using the Righteous font family. And you can just go to Google Fonts or fonts.google, and that will allow you to look at all the cool fonts that you can choose from. We're also using a background image, and let's see this in action. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down. Let's go to app.js, and let's add in the class name that I used here in this div. We're going to add class name is equal to app. Now, we're used to, if you've worked with CSS, we're used to class instead of class name. React uses class name because class is designated for something else. So just know that when you're using React, class name is how you talk with the CSS. So now we're going to go into each component and make sure that each one gets its class name. Again, we're not going to get too much into what is happening here. We're just styling it. We're making it look pretty. So our class name here is home. And we're going to style the link as well. Class name is home-link. And if we were to go back to our app.css, we will see home and home link. So it's all there. I've already styled it out, but yeah. Because it's in our app.css, it's the parent of all these components. And so we don't need to import the app.css into each of our components. It's already imported in the app.js. So that's why we're not having to import it into all these different components. Now let's go back. Let's do the NASA photo. In here, we have our styling. Okay. So this div has the class name of NASA-photo. And then this image, we have class name equal to photo. Save that. We have a class name of photo here. I left that here when I did the copy and paste earlier. And these p tags, let's give them a class name of, we'll do date. And then this one, we'll have a class name of explanation. Okay, cool. So I'm pretty sure that's it for Navbar. Our last one, or NASA photo, our last one is Navbar. Let's go to that one. And this one has in the div class name of Navbar. Easy. And then this link has a class name of link. Okay. If all of our styling worked and we got everything right, this is going to look pretty. I think it looks pretty. Ooh, it's working. Okay. So the things that I've done, I have done like a hover. I've done this cool background image that I found. It kind of looks like stars to me. They're just plus signs, but it kind of looks like twinkling stars. So if we hover over that, it has this little animation transition stuff. And click on that, and it will take us to a styled NASA photo component. So here we see the photo, we see the title, we see the date, and we have all the explanation. And in the nav bar, this take me home will take me home. And it just goes back and forth. And that's really it. But we learned a lot in this video. We learned about React routing. We learned about the route versus link versus browser router and browser router. We did environment variables so we can hide our keys. We fetched an API, and it's a pretty one. I don't know. I really like this picture. I like astronomy. I like outer space. I always wanted to be an astronaut when I was a kid. I thought they were so cool. And I would watch all the astronaut movies, and I would look at all the astronaut books in the library. So I really like NASA API because yeah, it speaks to me. Speaks to me. So yeah, I hope you learned a lot today, and go ahead and use this API and create something different. Maybe you want to use this API and you want to display more than just this data that I've pulled up. I mean, there's plenty of other things. That console log is still hanging out, so let's see the other things that we can pull. Yeah, we could pull out, I mean, I pretty much pulled out all the things. There's an HD URL, but there's the copyright in there, there's the date. You could also do a thing where you change the date and you can choose, okay, I want 2020 of February 2nd photo of the day to show up. You could do that, but it's just kind of a fun way to display something beautiful, but also learn while you're building it. And we were able to nest a component into another component. That's what we did with the Navbar here, the Take Me Home. And yeah, I hope you had a lot of fun. I hope you learned a lot. So if you use this API, I want to see your projects. I want to see what you've created, how you styled it differently, because mine's a little goony with the righteous. I actually really like this font. But yeah, let me know in the comments below what you think. If you want to see other things. Next, we are going to be deploying this to Netlify because we want to show our community the cool application that we've created. And right now it's just local. And so we want to deploy it, and we want to send that URL out, and we want everyone to see all of our hard work and all the things that we've learned with React. So yeah, in our next video, we're going to be deploying this whole application to Netlify. And it's a little different because we are using the React router. So things are going to be a little different than just deploying, but it's not too bad. So yeah, let me know in the comments below other things that you may want to see, other apps you want to be built out, things that, I don't know, we can learn together. So yeah, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit that like button. And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks, everyone. Mahalo.